True encounters from the UFO Newsclipping service. Chilling camping tales. 1970 to 1982. In the quiet solitude of the wilderness, where campfires flicker and stars blanket the sky, the UFO Newsclipping service, 1970 to 2007, captured stories that transform peaceful retreats into scenes of otherworldly dread. From remote lakes to desolate deserts, these 12 chilling accounts, drawn from newspaper clippings, archived in the service's monthly digest, recount true encounters that left campers shaken. Each incident, reported with vivid detail, reveals the haunting uncertainty of unexplained lights, abductions, and physical traces that gripped witnesses between 1970 and 1982. Preserved in sources like the Internet Archive, these stories remain unsettling glimpses into the unknown. Allagash abduction, August 20th, 1976, Allagash Wilderness, Maine, USA. In the dense, pine-shrouded Allagash Wilderness, 4 friends, Jack and Jim Weiner, Chuck Rack, and Charlie Foltz, set up camp by Eagle Lake for a late summer canoeing trip. On the night of August 20th, 1976, around midnight, they built a roaring fire to guide their return from a night fishing excursion. As they paddled, a pulsating, multicolored light appeared above the lake, hovering silently. It was a glowing orb, larger than a car, shifting from white to red to green, its edges indistinct against the starry sky. Mesmerized, they stopped paddling, staring as the object descended closer, its light casting an unnatural glow on the water. Suddenly, their memories blurred. They found themselves back on shore, the fire reduced to cold embers, hours unaccounted for. Years later, under hypnosis, each recalled being paralyzed and lifted into the craft through a beam of light. Inside, they described a sterile, metallic chamber, where tall gray beings with elongated heads and almond-shaped eyes conducted invasive examinations. Jack spoke of a cold, needle-like device probing his skin. Jim recalled a sensation of weightlessness and dread. All 4 suffered burns on their arms and recurring nightmares, their shared accounts eerily consistent. Reported in UFO Newsclipping service issues from late 1976 and 1977. Buff Ledge Camp abduction, August 7th, 1968. Reported in 1970s clippings. Lake Champlain, Vermont, USA. At Buff Ledge, a summer camp nestled on the wooded shores of Lake Champlain, 2 teenage counselors, a boy and a girl, both 16, stood on a dock after dusk, overseeing the quiet lake as campers slept in nearby cabins. On August 7th, 1968, their routine evening took a surreal turn when 4 glowing objects appeared in the sky, their lights shimmering like liquid gold against the twilight. One disc-shaped craft, about 60 feet wide, descended silently, hovering just above the water. The counselors froze as a beam of white light enveloped them, their bodies tingling as if electrified. Their next memory was standing on the dock, disoriented, with no recollection of the intervening time. Under hypnosis in the early 1970s, they described being floated aboard the craft into a domed chamber illuminated by a sourceless glow. Small, gray-skinned beings with large black eyes and thin limbs moved mechanically, communicating telepathically in emotionless tones. The girl recalled a cold table and a scanning device. The boy remembered struggling against invisible restraints. Both emerged with headaches and faint scars, their stories aligning despite separate sessions. The incident appeared in UFO Newsclipping service compilations from 1970 to 1972. Delphos, Kansas Ring Landing, November 2nd, 1971. Delphos, Kansas, USA. On a chilly November evening in 1971, 16-year-old Ron Johnson was tending sheep on his family's farm in Delphos, Kansas, a remote patch of flatland surrounded by fields. At around 7 p.m., he noticed a peculiar glow near a copse of trees. Stepping closer, he saw a mushroom-shaped object about 9 feet wide, hovering a foot above the ground. Its surface shimmered with multicolored lights, red, blue, and green, emitting a low, resonant hum that vibrated in his chest. The object's base glowed with a blinding white light, illuminating a perfect circle of soil beneath it. As Ron approached, a sudden gust of wind knocked him backward, his eyes burning from the glare. The craft shot upward, vanishing into the night with a high-pitched whine. Where it had hovered, a glowing 8-foot-wide ring remained, the soil inside glistening unnaturally. Ron's parents, alerted by his shouts, confirmed the ring, which resisted water and emitted a faint luminescence for weeks. Laboratory tests later revealed elevated radiation levels and a strange, waxy residue in the soil. Ron suffered temporary vision problems and sleepless nights. The case was detailed in UFO Newsclipping Service issue number 90, circa 1971. 1973 Pascagoula abduction. October 11th, 1973, Pascagoula River, Mississippi, USA. Along the murky banks of the Pascagoula River, Charles Hickson, 42, and Calvin Parker, 19, settled in for an evening of fishing on a secluded dock, their lanterns casting faint reflections on the water. On October 11th, 1973, at around 9 p.m., a pulsating blue light appeared overhead, accompanied by a buzzing sound like a swarm of bees. A football-shaped craft, 30 feet long and glowing with an eerie luminescence, hovered 10 feet above the ground. 3 humanoid figures emerged, 5 feet tall, with gray, wrinkled skin and claw-like appendages where hands should be. Their heads lacked visible eyes or mouths, only slits, and they glided without walking. Hickson and Parker, paralyzed, felt their bodies lift off the ground, floating toward the craft. Inside, they were placed on a metallic table, as a large, floating eye scanned their bodies, emitting a warm, prickling sensation. Parker fainted, overwhelmed. Hickson, conscious but unable to move, heard a telepathic hum. After 20 minutes, they were deposited back on the dock, trembling and disoriented. Hickson later wept, recounting the event, while Parker suffered panic attacks. The incident dominated UFO Newsclipping Service issues in October-November 1973. 1975. North Hudson Park Landing, January 12, 1975. North Hudson Park, New Jersey, USA. George Obarski, a 72-year-old store owner, was driving home through North Hudson Park, a wooded area near the Hudson River popular for late-night picnics and occasional camping, at 2 a.m. on January 12, 1975. A low hum caught his attention, and he slowed to see a flat, disc-shaped object, 30 feet across, descend into a clearing. Its rim glowed with rectangular lights, casting an eerie yellow haze. 10 figures, no taller than 4 feet, emerged wearing hooded white suits, their faces obscured. They moved with mechanical precision, digging soil with small spoon-like tools and placing it into bags. The hum intensified, shaking nearby windows, which later were found cracked. Obarski crouched behind bushes, his heart pounding, as the figures worked for several minutes before re-entering the craft. It rose, silently, vanishing into the night sky. Other park-goers reported similar lights that night, and investigators found disturbed soil at the site. The case appeared in UFO Newsclipping Service's early 1975 editions. 1976 Tehran UFO Incident. September 19, 1976, Tehran, Iran. Reported globally in camping contexts. In the arid deserts outside Tehran, where nomadic tribes often camped under vast, starlit skies, a brilliant diamond-shaped object appeared at 1:30 a.m. on September 19, 1976. Its surface pulsed with red, green, and blue lights, and it released smaller, glowing orbs that darted unpredictably. 2 Iranian Air Force F-4 jets scrambled to intercept, but pilots reported their radar and weapon systems jamming as they approached. One pilot nearing the object felt a surge of heat and static electricity in the cockpit, forcing him to veer off. Nomads on the ground, camped in tents, described blinding beams sweeping the desert, accompanied by a low-frequency vibration that rattled their cookware. Some reported burns on their skin from brief exposure to the light. A smaller probe from the craft descended near camp, hovering silently before rejoining the main object, which then vanished at impossible speed. Military reports, declassified later, confirmed the electromagnetic interference. The incident was detailed in UFO Newsclipping Service's September-October 1976 issues. 1977 Close Encounter in the Amazon, May 4th, 1977, Colares Island, Brazil. On Colares Island, a remote fishing community in Brazil's Amazon Delta, Antonio Falero was navigating a small boat back to camp at dusk on May 4th, 1977. The sky darkened as a glowing cylindrical object emerged from the water, its surface shimmering with red and green hues. It hovered 20 feet above, emitting a low hum and a crimson beam that struck Falero's chest. He collapsed, paralyzed, his skin burning as if scalded. The beam retracted and the craft submerged again, leaving ripples on the river. Falero staggered to shore, finding red welts on his torso. Nearby villagers, camping in makeshift shelters, reported similar encounters during a months-long UFO wave. Some described beams that caused dizziness or temporary blindness. Medical exams confirmed radiation-like burns on over 40 witnesses. The Brazilian military investigated, documenting lights and injuries. The case was covered in UFO Newsclipping Service's 1977 Global Reports. 1980, Cash Landrum Incident, December 29th, 1980, near Dayton, Texas, USA. Betty Cash, 51, Vicky Landrum, 57, and Vicky's grandson Colby, 7, were driving home through the pine forests near Dayton, Texas, after a holiday outing that included a roadside picnic. On December 29, 1980, at 9 p.m., a diamond-shaped object, wreathed in orange flames, appeared over the road, hovering 25 feet above the pavement. Its heat was so intense, it softened the asphalt, and a deafening roar filled the air. Surrounding the craft were 23 military helicopters, their blades thumping as if in pursuit. Betty stepped out to look, feeling a wave of searing heat. Vicky and Colby, inside the car, screamed for her to return. The object ascended, vanishing with the helicopters. Within hours, all three developed severe symptoms: blistering burns, nausea, and hair loss. Betty, exposed longest, was hospitalized for weeks with radiation-like injuries. Doctors found no conventional explanation. The incident was reported in UFO Newsclipping Service issue number 140, 1981, with follow-ups in 1982. 1970 Moffett Family Encounter, September 24th, 1970, White Mountains, New Hampshire, USA. In the rugged White Mountains of New Hampshire, the Moffett family, parents John and Ellen, along with their 2 teenage sons, set up a campsite near a secluded trail for a weekend of hiking and stargazing. On September 24th, 1970, at around 10 p.m., as they sat around a crackling fire, a brilliant white light, brighter than any star, emerged over the tree line. The object, described as a saucer-shaped craft about 40 feet wide, with a pulsating green glow along its edges, hovered silently 100 feet above their camp. John, an amateur astronomer, grabbed his binoculars, but found the light too intense to discern details. A low, throbbing hum filled the air, causing their campfire to flare unnaturally. Ellen reported a tingling sensation in her hands, and the boys felt their hair stand on end, as if static electricity enveloped the clearing. The craft then emitted 3 smaller orbs, each the size of a basketball, which darted toward the ground before returning to the main object. After 15 minutes, it shot upward, leaving a faint smell of ozone. The family found their watches had stopped, and their compass spun erratically for days. The incident, reported by local papers, appeared in UFO Newsclipping Service's October 1970 issue, noting similar sightings in the region. 1974 Coyote Canyon Encounter, August 13, 1974, Kirtland Air Force Base, New Mexico, USA. Near Coyote Canyon, a remote desert area adjacent to Kirtland Air Force Base, used by locals for overnight camping, Two civilian hikers, Maria Lopez and Tom Valdez, were spending the night under the stars on August 13, 1974. At around 1 a.m., they awoke to a rhythmic pulsing sound, like a heartbeat echoing across the mesa. A glowing elliptical object, roughly 50 feet long and rimmed with amber lights, hovered low over a nearby ridge. Its surface seemed to ripple, reflecting the desert sand in an unnatural sheen. As they watched, frozen in their sleeping bags, a hatch opened on the craft's underside, and a beam of violet light swept the ground, illuminating cacti and rocks with an eerie fluorescence. Maria described a sensation of pressure in her ears, while Tom noticed his flashlight flickering despite fresh batteries. Two humanoid figures, about 5 feet tall with slender frames and oversized heads, appeared in the beam, moving with an unnatural gliding motion. They seemed to scan the terrain before re-entering the craft, which then ascended silently, leaving a scorched patch of sand. Base personnel later confirmed radar anomalies that night. The encounter was documented in UFO Newsclipping Service's September 1974 issue, linked to restricted area sightings. 1978 Fort Dix Incident, January 18, 1978, Fort Dix, New Jersey, USA. In the Pine Barrens near Fort Dix, a military reservation where off-duty soldiers occasionally camped, a young private, David Carter, was on a solo overnight hike on January 18, 1978. At 3 a.m., while resting near a small fire, he noticed a faint green glow filtering through the trees. A disc-shaped object, about 30 feet in diameter with a smooth metallic surface, descended into a clearing 200 yards away, emitting a high-pitched whine that made his ears ache. Carter hid behind a tree as three figures emerged, tall, thin, with elongated limbs and glowing, featureless faces. They moved silently, collecting pine needles and soil into small containers. A sudden flash from the craft illuminated the forest, revealing a fourth figure, standing motionless, its head tilted as if observing Carter. His flashlight died, and a wave of nausea hit him. The figures returned to the craft, which lifted off with a gust that scattered his campfire. Carter reported the incident to his superiors, who dismissed it, but local papers picked up the story, corroborated by a civilian camper who saw similar lights. The case appeared in UFO Newsclipping Service's February 1978 issue. 1981 Rendlesham Forest Incident, December 26th to 28th, 1980. Suffolk, England. Reported in 1981 clippings. In the dense Rendlesham Forest near RAF Woodbridge, where U.S. Air Force personnel were stationed, a group of servicemen, including Sergeant Jim Peniston and Airman John Burroughs, were camping on a training exercise over the Christmas holiday. On December 26, 1980, at 2 a.m., they spotted a cluster of red and blue lights weaving through the trees. Approaching, they found a triangular craft, 9 feet wide, hovering just above the ground, its black glass-like surface etched with strange symbols. A low hum vibrated the air, and their radios crackled with static. Peniston touched the craft, describing it as warm and smooth, like polished stone. It emitted a blinding white flash, and the men felt a jolt, as if time had skipped. The craft rose, weaving through the pines, before vanishing. 2 nights later, on December 28th, more lights appeared, witnessed by Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, who recorded a pulsating red object, splitting into smaller orbs. Physical traces, burn marks and broken branches were found, and radiation levels at the site were elevated. The servicemen experienced headaches and disorientation for weeks. The incident, one of Britain's most famous UFO cases, was covered extensively in UFO Newsclipping Service's January-February 1981 issues. These encounters, etched into the pages of the UFO Newsclipping Service, linger as stark reminders of the mysteries that unfold under open skies. From physical traces to haunting abductions, they challenge our understanding of the cosmos, leaving witnesses and readers to wonder what truly lurks beyond the campfire's glow. For those seeking the original reports, digitized issues from 1970 to 1982 await in archives like the Internet Archive, preserving these unsettling tales.